everyone, and welcome to another episode of Chai Talk for the Left Hook Substack, where I invite subject matter experts like the very young, virile David Rothkopf, who has joined me today. You know him, you love him. He is a national security expert. He is a podcast host. He co-hosts a podcast with Norm Ornstein. What is the name of that podcast, Norm?
Dave.
Dave.
It's unbelievable. The podcast with Norm is called DSR's Words Matter. The DSR standing for Deep State Radio, which is the network we have. So we do about 15 podcasts a week.
And also, what is a Substack that you edit that people should subscribe to as we talk?
Need to know.
Need to know. And Norms and the Rothkopfs, they just get so confusing. They all look so same, all these ethnic names. But I have David here because the world is perfectly fine. Everything is going normal. And Donald Trump, if you all recall, who's the president of the United States of America, he promised his base and the world that if he were to be elected, everyone would respect America again. If he were to be elected, the war in Ukraine would end. If he were to be elected, folks, the war in Gaza would end. If he were to be elected, folks, America would be great again. And as we are talking right now, 20 people are wounded in Tel Aviv. The Iron Dome is intercepting missiles because Iran is retaliating to Israel's unilateral strike. Donald Trump was supposed to talk to Iran to de-escalate the situation with negotiations, but Netanyahu respects Donald Trump so much that Netanyahu said, nah, I'm going to strike Iran and escalate a situation and pour gasoline on the fire, the genocide in Gaza. And then we also have tanks right here in D.C. because there's a military parade tomorrow in the Washington, D.C. to the tune of $45 million. And ICE, National Guard, and Marines are terrorizing brown folks in LA. Oh, yeah. And also the Secret Service is beating up Alex Padilla. But other than that, things are going great. And with that, I yield the floor to you, David. Where do you want to start in the wheel of chaos? I'll spin it for you. Here's the wheel.
I'll start anywhere you want. You started in the Middle East. We could start in the Middle East. You said that Netanyahu didn't respect Trump. That's true. I don't think anybody does at this point. I would say that Donald Trump, I wrote a column in the Daily Beast. I write for the Daily Beast. There's a column I wrote today. And what I say is that Donald Trump could be the most impotent U.S. president of our lifetime because he has alienated our allies, so he doesn't have influence with them. They mock him openly. He has promised to get tough, but hasn't with anybody. So Putin pushes him around. Netanyahu pushes him around. Xi Jinping is the one I think is best at pushing him around, getting what he wants. And in case after case after case, where he's the art of the deal guy. He doesn't get the deals. We didn't have 90 deals in 90 days on trade. We haven't actually had any deals in 90 days. There's no Ukraine deal, as you said. There's no Gaza deal, as you said. Steve Witkoff, his golf buddy, who was supposed to be cutting all these deals, has failed miserably. Witkoff was the one who was supposed to be meeting with the Iranians. We are certainly farther from an Iran deal than we have been at any time since 2018, when it's useful to remind everybody, in 2018, there was an Iran deal.
Yep.
It had been negotiated by the Obama team. And because it was negotiated by the Obama team, Trump didn't like it. So he got out of it. And he spent the past few months desperately trying to get into it. And I think he thought in some 4D chess move that he would sort of say to the Israelis, wink, nod, sure, go ahead, but don't invade them unless we say it's okay. And the Israelis were like, wink, nod, sure, buddy, we'll do what we want. And, that's what's happened is Trump was pushing for a deal and the Israelis pushed back and said, no, we're going to do it our own way. And they attacked yesterday. They informed the U.S.
Yep.
They did not request the support of the U.S. I think they got some, but to conclude, I think the funny thing to see in this, or the revealing thing to see in this, was as soon as the Israelis started striking Iran, the first thing the U.S. did was to put out a statement by Marco Rubio, and it said, "We had nothing to do with this. Don't
Yep.
touch." And then overnight, there was, Trump putting out a thing saying, "Well, we knew about it, but you should like negotiate with us, and we'll get out of it." And it was kind of mealy mouthed. And by this morning, when the strike looked like it was successful, Trump was like, "This was my idea all along. I'm a master of the universe." Complete, absolute bullshit. The problem is when you're trying to figure out what's really going on with guys like Netanyahu and Trump, who are two of the most notorious liars in the world, that you can't take their word for it. And so we're going to have to wait and see what the impact on Iran was, what the impact on Israel is, how long this lasts, whether the U.S. gets drawn into it. Certainly, Trump's made it more dangerous for Americans by now saying, "Oh, yeah, this was our idea all along." So,
Well, already America's drawn into it because the recent reporting as of the past few hours is that the U.S. in some capacity is helping Israel deter some of these bombs with intelligence, right? Some of these missiles that are falling in Tel Aviv that have not killed anyone, thank God, but wounded 20 folks. And also, what happens in the Middle East, it doesn't just stay contained to the Middle East, especially when it comes to Israel and Palestine. It should be clear to anyone by now, especially the past year and a half. We also have U.S. troops who, as of yesterday, and now U.S. troops are under threat, and they're worried about their security. And I'm glad you mentioned Trump's incompetence. And the article that David wrote earlier today was how Iran strikes put Trump's impotence on full embarrassing display. And the subtitle is All the Reasons Trump is the Opposite of a 4D Chess Player are on brutal display in the Tehran rubble. And last night I was talking to a bunch of folks who here in the DC area, and they're like, well, maybe Trump is trying to play some 4D chess. I'm like, he doesn't know how to play 3D chess, checkers. He got played. This man is a fool. And I'm so glad you connected the dots because it seems that clearly Netanyahu has no problem running circles around Donald Trump because Donald Trump publicly has openly said, rebuffing Israel, I'm going to talk to Iran. We're going to have these meetings this weekend. We want to de-escalate the situation. And Netanyahu is like, whatever. We're going to bomb Iran. What are you going to do about it? And now they're saying, we had nothing to do with this. And now they're saying, well, we did have something to do with this. Somebody's clearly lying. Either way, Donald Trump is made to look weak, impotent, and incompetent. And Netanyahu got the better of him yet again. And I'm so glad you mentioned the Iran deal because the Iran deal, folks, was successful. And at the time, I praised it. I said it was good, a very good thing that Obama did. It cooled the temperature. Hawks on both sides criticize it. In the first administration, Netanyahu again played Donald Trump and made him blow it up. And then even Mattis, if you remember, David, Mattis was like, no, this is good. He was initially a hawk, but he said, this is actually good. Trump walked away from it. So Trump blew up a successful deal, then tried to walk back to it, and then Netanyahu blew it up again for him. And he's sitting there looking completely weak and impotent as Gaza is completely destroyed. Israel now has missiles in it. Iran is friggin' pissed off, as it every right to be. There's military tanks. His approval ratings are underwater. There's protests happening, and Russia is just treating him like a puppy. Show me the art of the deal here, David. What am I missing?
well, I don't think you're missing anything. There is no art of the deal. Trump's art of the deal has always been getting out before the suckers who fell for the deal, and finding his next scam. That's how you end up with a guy who's like, what is he had 6 bankruptcies?
Fix.
And in each one of those cases, he got his money and he got out. This is how it works with Truth Social. He's getting his money and he's getting out. This is how it works with his crypto scam. He and some other guys will get their money, and then when people realize it's worth nothing, he'll get out. And that's what he's trying to do with the presidency. The art of the deal is the art of the steal. He's going in, he's being president for 4 years, and he's trying to monetize it in ways we've never seen before. I mean, this is corruption of the most overt stuff. People say this is like a third world country. It's not. In third world countries, they try to hide it. This guy has turned the White House into a fucking toll booth. He's turned it into a place where you've got to stop, pay the toll. If you want anything, you want a pardon for your son, give him $1 million. If you want, you
That
want,
happened, by the way, folks.
yeah, that really happened. If you want a real trade deal, put a couple $1 billion into the cyber coin. If you want, and that's the way it is operating. And what is shocking, and it goes back to answering your prior question, nobody in U.S. politics is trying to stop him.
Yeah,
Nobody. The
I was going to ask
only
you that. Follow up on
the,
that.
the only people who are afraid of Donald Trump, sadly enough, are Republicans and Democrats. The only people who fall for it. The president of Mexico, she makes fun of him. The president of Canada, he makes fun. The chancellor of Germany comes over here, sits next to him, and plays him for a fool. These people are bemused by. I talked to some people in China the other day, and they were like, Donald Trump is a very good president for China,
Oof.
terrible president for the United States. This is where we are, folks. And the problem is that we live in the one place in the world that can't shrug off Trump's comic and tragic incompetence.
And just to give you a heads up, folks, Canada, the Liberal Party, was underwater by 20 points. There should be a conservative prime minister right now. Donald Trump was so incompetent, so terrible, so bad that Canadians said, oh shit, this guy has mocked us, ridiculed us, threatened our sovereignty. There's no way that we're going to let this mother effer thumb his nose at us. And in fact, the Conservative Party, if this is what they're going to be, we're going to elect Mark Carney. There was a remarkable 20-point turnaround in Canada. We saw the turnaround in Australia. We're seeing literally Mexico. We're seeing the rest of the world learn from our mistakes. And yet, America, especially the establishment, Dave, and I'm so glad you mentioned both Republicans and Democrats, they seem to be doubling down on impotence and incompetence and not standing up to what is clearly a vicious wannabe fascist, but also an incompetent, decaying fascist. This man is 79 years old. He's clearly lost several steps. I mean, we saw him trip trying to climb the stairs. Remember when they were talking about Joe Biden tripping? It was only one day's news. He fell asleep several times. He fell asleep during Pope Francis's funeral. Biden was there. Biden did not fall asleep. He openly, this is the top of my head, I'm remembering, he openly said, what's the Congo? I have no idea what the Congo is. That's an exact quote. We literally see him saying to the camera, what am I signing? What am I signing? He doesn't even know the executive orders that he's signing. He spent 25% of his presidency so far golfing. And I actually agreed with him. Excuse me, I believed him when the first Signal Gate happened, folks. And you remember it was the White House that told JD Vance to step down when JD Vance said, maybe we should think twice about striking. And then someone from the White House said, no, we're going to go right now. That was Stephen Miller. When Donald Trump was asked about it, he had no idea what was happening. I believe him because notoriously he does not use social media or phones or apps. So he has no idea what's happening. And the person who's kind of seems to be in charge, especially when it comes to terrorizing Padilla and brown folks, is Stephen Miller. And so before we get to the Middle East, let's stay on the ground. Tomorrow we have this military parade for this buffoon, this king, this daddy, the emperor with no clothes. And it seems to me that this man really doesn't know what's happening. And what's even more terrifying is the person who seems to be running the show or has more influence than JD Vance is Stephen Miller. On the domestic front, what do you predict is going to happen by the end of the summer?
Well, first of all, Stephen Miller, to people in the White House, Republicans refer to him as the prime minister or the PM, right? So, this is his acknowledged role. Maybe Musk was the deputy president for a while. Musk did a terrible job. Musk may have done a terrible thing to Stephen Miller. I'm not really sure about the truth about that story. And Steve, where,
His wife
yes,
right now is still working. Stephen Miller's wife is still working with Elon Musk. Uh, Good luck, Stephen Miller.
no, this woman needs counseling. But in any event, let's set that aside for a second. Stephen Miller is one of the most evil characters that has manifested himself in America. This guy lives, breathes, bleeds, pees, and poops racism.
Yep.
That he is a racist from the tip of his toes to the top of his bald head. Not that there's anything wrong with being bald. and which he used to spray paint, by the way, if you recall the first
I recall, and I
president.
have shamelessly shared the photos, and I always will.
Yeah, and which is, as when you said, well, why are you making fun of this guy? He's awful because he is so odious. He's a cartoon character of odiousness, and it brings up a really really important point, which is Miller is odious. Nobody likes Miller. Miller has for years had these horrid views. And he was one of the few people from the first Trump administration who Trump said, stay with me.
Yep.
He stayed with Trump for 4 years. He now is in a position where he is the most influential policy person in the United States of America, because as you say, Trump is disconnected. And the only thing we know about him is how horrible he is. So what does that say about Trump?
Yep.
And I, we can say, well, look, he's 79 years old, or he's peeing in his pants, or he's doddering and he doesn't speak well, or we can say all that stuff. But he picked Stephen Miller.
Yep.
He's letting Stephen Miller do this stuff. He's fired plenty of people. It's his signature move, and yet Stephen Miller is right there. So Stephen Miller has to be thought of as Trump's brain,
Yep.
right? Stephen Miller is the guy who channels Trump. So let's not, say, oh yeah, well, he's got this guy who's manipulating him. No,
No,
he's
no, no.
got
He's an
this guy,
extension of Trump.
he's channeling him. It's, he is, and look at the others who Stephen Miller has put in who have traction now. You know, Christy No, who's kind of, they call her Ice Barbie. She's sort of cosplay Barbie, BDSM Barbie. She is
Why
bad.
disrespect Barbie? Barbie, folks, is actually a kind plastic doll who wants to uplift humanity.
All right,
Uh,
all right, all right.
but she's cosplay, yeah, cosplay Goebbels.
Well, maybe, although a closer equivalent on that is Tom Homan, who
Hmm.
literally wears costumes, who looks like, character from the bar in Star Wars, and is every bit as cartoonishly evil. These people are the ones with traction in this administration. Here's the shocking thing: Trump was profoundly unsuccessful first time. He was impeached twice. He killed 1 million Americans with bad policies on COVID. He blew up JCPOA. And you look at he was terrible. He is much worse this time.
Yeah.
He is much worse. He has done much more damage in 6 months than he did in the last time. And and he's setting us up for bigger problems to come. We don't if there were a pandemic now, we would have no protection because RFK Jr. doesn't believe in vaccines and he's surrounded himself with crackpots. If there were a war where we were threatened directly, there's no national security advisor. The NSC, he fired 100 people. It's going down to half its former size. It doesn't matter because Trump doesn't take advice. He's only gone to 12 or 13 now intelligence briefings.
Yep.
He won't read. So Tulsi Gabbard has to figure out how to turn an intelligence briefing to look like a Fox news show, because that's the only way that you can actually funnel stuff into the brain of Trump. So we're not protected on that front. FEMA, he's getting rid of it. We're not protected against disasters. Hurricanes, tornadoes, getting rid of the Weather Bureau, getting rid of the ability to protect us on that front. Counterterrorism. He put in charge of counterterrorism at DHS a 22-year-old guy who literally, looks like, somebody who spent his entire high school getting swirlied, right? One of is odious.
Thomas Fugate, folks, ex-gardener and grocery assistant.
Yeah, but with zero experience. I can go down the list, but every single crisis defense area we've got: cyber, terrorism, bioterrorism, weather, natural disasters, national security. He's getting rid of all of them. So the next time something happens, we will be less prepared than we were on 9/11, less prepared when we were when the financial crisis hit, less prepared than we were when the pandemic hit.
And other than that, though, at least the trains are still running for now. It is
Eight
we're
trains. That remember, Biden loved trains and Democrats like high speed trains. So the Republicans are killing every train project that they can kill because they think trains, I mean, what kind of world we live in? They think trains are democratic,
mm,
that they're partisan. It's like mass transit, subway. The Secretary of Transportation said, well, if you get on the subway, you're going to be surrounded by criminals. It's bizarre. It's absolutely a bizarre world. But one final point: when you were a kid growing up,
yeah,
America thought of itself as the most powerful country in the world because it
yeah.
was. America thought of itself as a beacon of democracy because it had been. America thought of itself as the greatest country in the world. It wasn't great in all respects. History of racism, genocide, Hiroshima. There are a lot of bad things in our past. But there was at least an argument with a couple world wars that we had stepped up and saved the world. None of those things are true.
Nope.
They were true 6 months ago. None of them are true anymore. And the reason they're not true is Donald Trump has stripped those things away from us.
We are being destroyed by the world's dumbest people, and that's what makes it even more painful. Because if this was a comic book, if Lex Luthor destroyed me, I'm like, you know what? It's Lex Luthor. It's Brainiac. It's the Joker. This is like the Stilt Man being elevated into supervillain status and having minions around. I used to reference Idiocracy. Even Idiocracy wasn't this dumb. And within 5 months, folks, look at the damage that these idiotic people have done. White supremacy has always been self-destructive and cruel and stupid. And you're seeing it on full display right now. And you're seeing it with Stephen Miller, who is an extension of Donald Trump's racist id. And you're seeing the twin sins of racism and greed destroy us from within. I believe the end game is America becoming more weak, America becoming more isolated. It's already happening. Tourism has fallen down, folks, to America. We're going to lose at least $12 billion. There's a World Cup in 2026. Who the F is going to come? There's the Olympics in 2028. If there was even a 5% chance that I was visiting a country and I forgot to bring my passport from my hotel and I could get friggin' rendition to Guantanamo, I would not visit that country, right?
Worse, if you were the most brilliant kid in China or the most brilliant kid in any country in the world, 6 months ago, you would have thought, I want to go to the United States to go to graduate school. And now, first of all, you might not be able to. But secondly, no one is going to do it because you know that if you go, you could get thrown in jail. If you leave the country and try to come back in, you might be barred. Your parents might get thrown in jail. The school you're going to might get defunded. That people will stop you at the border and take your cell phone and look at the messages on your cell phone. And if you have a cartoon about Trump, they're going to turn you away. And if you've got a legal issue here in the United States with your immigration status, you could end up in CCOT in El Salvador. So, what does that do? It doesn't just, reduce the competition to get in U.S. schools. 40% of the advanced AI researchers in the United States have their undergraduate degree from a Chinese university. 40%. That means we're losing that. We're talking, oh, yeah, we got to beat China in the AI race and all this other. Folks, ain't happening. China was already ahead of us in a lot of ways. We underestimate them at our peril. But our brain drain, it's not, brain drain, it's brain flush. We are
Yes.
flushing them out of our system as fast as we can. And it's, it's
Oh, it's actually
incredibly
it's
dangerous.
brain drained, brain flushed, and brain repellent. It's almost like we're allergic to the most talented, brilliant people coming. They're like, "Oh no, 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 we don't want you. Go to China." And folks, not in addition to what David said with the students, also the best of the best when it comes to scientists and researchers. China now is aggressively poaching our best researchers, our best scientists, people who are working on cutting edge medicine, right, to try to save humanity from
Not just
cancer and
China, by the way.
Alzheimer's.
The Europeans are doing it. Japan just announced a program. It's funding a major program. If you don't get funding here, call Japan. They'll fund you. Canada is doing the same thing. Our allies are poaching, and it's tragic. But the question you got to ask yourself is, how do you recover? Do you recover by winning in 2026 with
Uh,
Democrats? No, that's not going to
no,
do it. Do you recover by winning in 2028 with Democrats? Heck
no.
no. If you were thinking of where am I going for the next 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, 10 years, you go, well, Republicans could come back. I'm not, the United States swings back and forth. We go from unilateralism of Trump to the sort of feckless lead from behind of Obama to the gated community of Trump 1.0, to Biden's sort of aspirational but deeply flawed multilateralism, and now to the ethnic nationalism of Trump 2.0. Nobody's going to trust us as a partner. Nobody is going to pick us as a destination to live here. We are looking at something that is, at the minimum, costs the United States leadership for a generation.
Yeah.
At the
No,
minimum.
I agree, Dave. I've said this for a while now with Danielle, my co-host at Democracy Ish, and we've been saying this for about a year. Is all those individuals who think there's going to be a reset in 2026 and 2028, all those individuals who thought, he'll change things up. What they don't realize is this is a generational fight and a generational struggle. You just can't recover quickly when the entire village burns down. And I don't know if I'm going to be alive to see it. Danielle openly says she doesn't know if she'll be alive to see the recovery, right? But we have kids. We have to do our part. But I don't think people realize it's not easy to snap your fingers and bring back the Department of Education
Well,
or Veterans Affairs.
I have to say I'm involved in several efforts in this area, and I just had a lunch in this area with somebody senior has been involved in policy things for a long time. And this was the discussion we had. Because as much as we talk about how do we deal with authoritarianism in this country, which we need to, how do we beat them at elections if we get to have elections, which we need to talk about? What do we do if they take away elections, and how do we get America back? All those things are really, really important to talk about. But let's say we win on January and let's say we win in 2028. On January 20th or 21st in 2029, Democrats come in. You can't just hit a button and say we're going back to the Biden ways. You can't just, oh, now the Department of Education is back. Now USAID is back. Now HHS is back. Now the National Institutes of Health is back. Now the Kennedy Center is not performing direct. Now all the arts and agencies are back. The libraries that closed, the museums that closed, the arts organizations that closed, they're all back. You can't do it. So this new generation of leaders, starting in that year, is going to have to spend 20 years not only restoring American leadership in the world, they're going to have to reinvent every institution in the United States government. And we need to have this conversation now. We need to have
Yep.
our own Project 2029, because if you arrive and say, okay, now we've got to get down to this business, you'll be having meetings about reorganization for I used to be a government official, have meetings about reorganization for 4 years. Nothing will happen. And they'll be back in because
And
nobody likes that kind of impetus.
I don't know if you agree with me with this. I assume you do. What I've been saying for a long time is we don't need restoration, we need reformation. And the current establishment crop, whether it's in law firms or whether it's in business, especially when it's in media, when it's with Republicans or Democrats, they aren't made for this moment. They're not built for this fight. They don't recognize the threat that is currently facing us, and they haven't thought through the damage that is inevitable and the type of bold vision that will be required to not rebuild this country, but remake it, truly remake it in a way that is fair and equitable and responds and rebounds, inshallah, we hope, from the immense damage that will be done. And I wanted to give you this quote. This is from 10 days ago. Before Senator Padilla was assaulted, there were other folks. Maxine Waters had guns pointed at her. We had Mayor Baraka of Newark, who got manhandled or arrested by ICE. And we also had Representative Nadler's aides who were manhandled. And then there was a CNN clip between an interview between Dana Bash and Hakeem Jeffries. And Dana Bash said, "You previously warned the administration, the Trump administration, that charging members of Congress was, quote, a red line. What are you doing now that the red line you talked about has apparently been crossed?" Folks, this is 10 days ago. Hakeem Jeffries. "We will make that decision in a time, place, and manner of our choosing, but the response will be continuous and will meet the moment that is required." Dana Bash. What does that exactly mean? Have you not decided how to respond? Jeffries. We will respond in a time, place, and manner of our choosing if this continues to happen.
Look, this is exactly the thing to bring up because that was feckless. Chuck Schumer has been feckless. The Democratic leadership is a gerontocracy. It is time, and I say this with a guy with gray hair, as you said to me before we went on the air.
Both of them.
You've got it, and but you don't quite qualify to be a gerontocrat, I guess. But here's the thing: we need right now to look to a different generation of leaders. We need right now to understand why it is that AOC resonates and other people don't, and it's because Hakeem Jeffries looks like he's talking from talking points that were handed to him. And, some of the candidates who want to be president, people we know and that we've supported, always look like they're trying to get the right answer. What do you want me to say? I'll say whatever you want me to say to get me ahead here. We need people who speak from conviction, who don't dress it up, and who are willing to stand on principles, who aren't going to go for this bunch of Democratic consultants, centrists, who are like, hey, I know the answer to Trump. Let's meet him halfway. Trump barely won. Trump lost the popular vote the last time. Trump is too old to run. So where does that leave us? That leaves us with a chance for Democrats to be themselves and win. And so
Yeah.
what we need are people who do, J.B. Pritzker has been great,
He's fighting.
speaking from his heart. Jasmine Crockett has been great, speaking from her heart. There are people who are a little more centrist, a little more in the middle, who nonetheless managed to do this. People like Gretchen Whitmer. I mean, she was in the room with Trump, and that was a kind of an ugly thing. But in Michigan, she has been tough and standing up. Wes Moore in Maryland. I can give you a long list of these people. But the point is, let's turn the page, Democrats. The stakes are too high. This is a
Yeah.
20-year job of work. We need the people who are going to have the vision, the creativity, and the longevity to lead us through that.
I appreciate you saying that, and someone mentioned this, and you kind of stepped on it before. The person who mentioned this in the chat, forgive me, I didn't know your name. When I'm saying old, I'm not talking about age. I'm talking about old modes of thinking. They're not made for this moment. They're not built for this fight. If you're 80, 90, but you actually have that fighter spirit, if you're leading with conviction, if you are what David said, have the ethics and values, go ahead, do it, right? Bernie's and others.
Look at Bernie. Bernie's a perfect example. I wasn't a Bernie guy, but Bernie has been there dependably, calling people out, not dressing it up, getting it right, going out while everybody else was staying home, having a meeting with their consultants. He was on the road. So it's not age, it's old ideas that we've got to get.
It's the mindset. And speaking about the old ideas, I don't know if you'd agree with me on this. You might. Uh, I believe that Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza. I believe that Israel under Netanyahu has been belligerent for decades. I believe the occupation and the expansion of settlements have threatened not just Palestinians, naturally, not just the region, but also Israel's security, its democracy, its future, its character. I believe Netanyahu has been itching for a war for 25 years because we have the gray hair. And I remember when he was a champion for the war on terror. He's been trying to get this war against Iran for nearly 3 decades. Netanyahu, like Donald Trump, I believe is a weak, corrupt, wannabe authoritarian who wants to stay in power by any means necessary. And despite everything I just said, in the past year and a half, as we have seen streamlined to our phones and televisions, utmost brutality and a genocide, in Gaza, you still see the Democratic establishment and the Republican establishment not break with Israel, not meet its own base. Because if you see the base in the polls, David, I'm sure you've seen it across the board, especially young people, they want something different. And
Not,
so this will
not just
keep happening.
it's, by the way, it's not just young people. 70% of American Jews say in polls, and I think the number is higher and they don't say it, but at least 70% oppose what's being done by Netanyahu and his regime in Israel. Netanyahu is as evil a fucking leader as there is anywhere on the planet. You can say you think it's a genocide. It's a genocide.
Yeah.
54, nearly 55,000 people are killed. They are ethnically cleansing. They are trying to wipe these people off the map. They are trying to steal their land. They are doing everything in their power to make it so that they have a Palestinian question and a Palestinian solution that
Yep.
is exactly akin to the way the Germans, the Nazis handled the Jewish question. And we have to see that. And honestly, Joe Biden didn't see it. Joe
Nope.
Biden didn't respond to it. Joe Biden's team dropped the ball on this. And Donald Trump doesn't see it. And that's, right now, if sensible, decent people were in charge, Israel would not get $1 $1 more from the United States until there was a new government and a new policy. Israel would not get one bullet more from the United States until there was a new government and a new policy. The money we gave would be to support the progress towards a two-state solution, which is the only solution that can possibly work in this. And we would also reject the people who say defending Palestinians is anti Semitic. It's not. It's not. It is actually living up to Jewish values. It is actually saying what is in the interests of the Jewish people who live in Israel. And most of the Israelis I know agree 100% with me. Now, there is APAC and there is the Anti Defamation League that have gone over to MAGA World
Yep.
and Likud, and they represent a whole different world. And they're trying to say, hey, look, if you go and protest for Palestine, or if you protest for the Palestinian people, or you use the word genocide, you are an anti-Semite. My father, Holocaust survivor. 40
Mm.
members of my father's family were killed in the Holocaust. He barely escaped. He went back to fight the Nazis. Um, he was a Zionist at the time. I wouldn't say I am, but he was. And the reality is this administration in Israel has broken faith with the Israeli people. Netanyahu is as bad a leader as there is in the world right now. I made a little thing on Blue Sky this morning in which I said something like, I know who the three worst leaders in the world that we would be better off without are. I just don't know how to put them in order of who we'd like to see go first, right? And every single response was Putin, Netanyahu, Trump. Trump, Netanyahu,
That's what I
Putin.
was about to say.
Right. Every single response, because these are peas in a rotten pod.
David, God bless you for saying that, and I think it's important for people to hear, not just Muslims and Arabs and Palestinians say this. It's not. It's universal, right? Those protests against the war for the past year and a half, many times they were led by Jewish students, and they were saying "not in our name," because you're right. What's happening right now, especially as we're speaking, Israel and Iran, is not in the interest of Jews, of Muslims, of Iranians, of Palestinians. It's only in the interest of weak authoritarian men, people like Netanyahu, Trump, who have an insatiable appetite, and extremists who they will embolden, right? And the cost will be borne by the innocent, as it always has been. And what we need is bold leadership. And I believe this is the time. Like, this is the time for a Democrat. I know no one's going to do it. I believe, looking at all the polls in the past year and a half, if a Democrat came up and said, you know what? Enough. Israel does not get a single penny from us. until it stops the occupation, stops the genocide in Gaza, stops the expansion of the settlements. I think they'll win over MAGA folks because you even got MAGA folks who are saying enough is enough, right? But I don't see that bold leadership. I also will take it a step further and say that if a Democrat came out and said, abolish ICE, there's no reason for ICE to exist anymore if it's acting like the Gestapo. ICE was created during the war on terror in the 21st century. If you have no problem getting rid of USAID, Department of Education, and other folks, why do you need ICE? I think people will say, huh, if you frame, if you lead with conviction, right? I don't know if you remember, David, just a couple of months ago, Democrats were kowtowed on immigration, kept quiet, right? Helped pass the Lake and Riley Act, right? Kept quiet on Abrego Kilmar Garcia. I always give credit where credit's due. Senator Van Hollen went by himself to El Salvador, got proof of life of Abrego Kilmar Garcia. Then they were forced to message on it. The press was forced to cover it. Within 2 weeks, Donald Trump, even to this day now, is negative 20 points on Abrego Kilmar Garcia. So maybe it's time to actually, message, lead. Even if you're underwater, you can tilt the messaging, David. That's just me.
Well, no, it's not just you. And in fact, I constantly get people go, the left is the problem in the Democratic Party. Progressives are the problem in the Democratic Party. And what I say is this: tell me what a progressive believes in. Do they believe in fair tax codes and taxing billionaires? Do they believe people should have health care? Do they believe in a clean environment? Do they believe in common sense gun reforms? Do they believe in educational reform so everybody can, have an education from the time they're in preschool? Do they believe in the United States playing a responsible role in the world or a rational immigration policy? That's progressive, right? Everything I just said is progressive. Every single policy I just enumerated is supported by 70, 75%, or 80% of Americans. That's not left. That's mainstream. All people have to do is have the courage of their convictions and go out and say it. And I think, I'll tell you, how old are your kids?
10, 8, 5.
10, 8, and 5. I believe that any of your kids, if you went up to them and explained a problem that the country is facing, and you said, here's our choice, they'd make the right choice because you're raising them as decent human beings. And we're at a point in our country where the revolutionary mindset that we need is decent human beings, compassion, caring, caring for our community, caring for future generations. That's all it takes. The thing is, we have sort of descended so far in our political discourse that it sounds revolutionary. What? Tax a billionaire? What? Not give everybody an assault rifle to take with them to school? What? Make sure that, poor people don't die because they don't have health care? You're crazy. You're a socialist. That's because the Republicans have owned the narrative and the Democrats have been like Hakeem Jeffries saying, well, we'll get back to you on that, right? Let's own the narrative again by listening to our hearts.
Yep.
That'll get us to the right place.
The moment is now. And Hakeem Jeffries said 10 days ago, we will meet the moment. The moment is now, folks. And if you don't believe me, look at the tanks rolling down in the streets of the U.S. Capitol and look at the National Guard and the military being unleashed against citizens. The fact that I just said that statement 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, people said, no way. Yes, way. That's what's happening. So if not now, folks, when? And we need fighters. And we have people from the grassroots stepping up. We have the No Kings rally. It's going to be happening tomorrow, not just in America, all across the world. Stay safe, folks. Learn from our ancestors who participate in civil disobedience. There will be some bad faith actors who try to stir shit up. They did that during BLM. They were outsiders. Report them. Have your cameras out. Be, joyous if you can. And always remember there's more of us than there are of them. There is more of us than there are of them. David, I kept you much longer than I thought, but our community loved you. There's 900 people watching on a Friday. Who would have thought it at 6 p.m.? That's remarkable. David, shamelessly promote yourself, sir.
Well, you're very nice. I'm nice. It's good to see people subscribing to the Need to Know Substack or Need to Know with David Rothkopf. Please subscribe to that. I write 3 or 4 times a week for that. I write 3 or 4 times a week for the Daily Beast, so you can go and read my stuff there. And if you go to the dsrnetwork.com, we have Deep State Radio, which we've been doing 10, 12 years now. We have a whole bunch of podcasts. The one with Norm Warrenstein, Words Matter. We have one on AI called Consciousness. We have one on AI, climate, and energy. We have podcasts. We have a Need to Know podcast. We have a DSR Daily. And all of those podcasts, I think you like if you like this, because, Waj and I are kind of fellow travelers here. And if you're following him, follow us. I think we've all got to work in this together because this is a big job.
Yeah, and folks, if you think David is some flaming lefty progressive radical activist, maybe, but David also has worked within the administration. David has also worked in national security councils. David has also had a foot in within these privileged spaces of Aspen. He knows these people, and this is a man of a lifetime of experience who's worked both on the inside and outside, telling you we need reformation, we need change. We need a new way of thinking. We need fighters to step up. And when we say we have to get rid of the old guard, again, it is not about age. It's the old ossified type of thinking. The moment is now, folks. So thanks to David for joining me on a Friday night. Thank you to all for joining me. If you're coming out tomorrow, be safe. Folks, this is The Left Hook. And as David said, yes, we're fellow travelers. I subscribe to his Need to Know Substack. I recommend it. And for those who jumped in late, I strongly recommend listening to this conversation. It'll be up in about an hour and a half. I'll also have transcripts. So check it out. It's a 40-minute conversation. We talk about the Middle East. We talk about domestic policies. We talk about the type of dangers that we're in and the type of chaos that Donald Trump has caused in the past 5 months that people aren't aware of. The type of hole that we've dug ourselves into that's going to take a generation to dig ourselves out. But I got kids. David's got kids. David, do you have grandkids?
I do have one, actually.
Yes, he's got grandkids. So we can't afford to tap out and be apathetic. Be kind to yourselves, be empathetic. And folks, last thing I'll say is my mom reminded me yesterday that today is the 1 year anniversary of the Left Hook. So it was last night or today, and I think Dave and I started our Substacks around the same time. Uh, who would have thought I would be lucky getting 5 to 10,000 subscribers? I got a whole bunch more. I've kept everything free without paywall. You pay what you can. I'm not an idiot, but I am a fool. I'm a terrible capitalist. I believe people should be informed, especially as we fight fascism. So if you have a couple of bucks, chip in. If you don't, I get it. At least spread the good word. Subscribe to David's Substack, subscribe to my Substack. And please, oh, please, folks, be kind, be empathetic, and don't be a fascist. Thank you, David. Talk to you soon, buddy.
Bye bye.